Yeah, of course. So this is a really exciting partnership for us. It's our first land-based partnership on this kind of scale. So we're deploying GameScanner across all 3 venues for Crown Resorts in Australia. And actually, it's exactly the same in a lot of ways as it is in an online environment, because Crown Resorts have mostly carded play. So when you think about the data that you can get because players are carded, it's account-based, we know exactly what activity is taking place. The big thing on this project was making sure that the algorithms were tuned to understand the nuances that you see in land-based gambling behavior that are different from those that you see in online gambling behavior. We did that now. It's been a really great project. I've loved working with the team at Crown. They're excellent. So yeah, we're looking to roll this out to other land-based businesses as we move forward. Oh, wow. This one is a bit of a prickly pear. So, yeah, we've done a lot of work looking at the DGLJ's mandatory model that they're looking to roll out. I think there are a number of considerations that they need to still think through. You asked me how it will work in practice. So the idea that the DGOJ have put forward is that all operators will have to run this model. They will have to run it once a month. Now, that's obviously quite problematic, because when you think about risky gambling behavior and you think about escalation of risk, a lot can happen in a month. So operators are going to need other models that run more often to ensure that this is actually viable. Our machine learning engineers have had a good look at the model as well, and there are potentially some issues around what the model itself is detecting. So the way that the model is set up, it looks at sort of activity across a number of days, and then it divides them by the number of active days. Now, that's potentially quite problematic, because it's not hard to think about somebody who has an intense session. They will be rated much, much harder than somebody who has what would be deemed, under another sort of way of looking at this, as a continuous problematic pattern. But because that intense session is only going to be looked at on that one day of data, it's going to flag them as slightly more problematic. So I think there's still some stuff they need to think about. I think for operators, probably the biggest area of consideration is that the model is just a model. It does not come with any kind of case management. It doesn't come with any kind of analytics. So assuming that you just deploy the DGOJ's model and you're going to be covered, and that's your player tracking sorted out, is going to be a huge pitfall. You need the support systems that come with that. So I just talked a little bit about some of the pros and cons. I understand why the regulator in Spain wanted to do this, and I understand what they were looking to do. So their idea was that they wanted to standardize risk detection across the whole market. I think when they've looked at the proprietary solutions that some of their operators were using, they've seen a lot of disparity in the efficacy of those solutions. So they wanted to make sure that everybody's using the same model. So I get it. I understand why they want to do that. I think in a sort of operational sense, that's actually going to be quite problematic. And I think they'll sort of realize this as they start rolling it out. I think the first thing to say is that there is room for interpretation in the model. So straight away, that means that all businesses are not going to deploy it in exactly the same way. So that kind of negates that goal straight away. The other bit that is also really important is, how do you update a model on such scale? So if you have a whole market using this model and you want to make sure everybody's using the same model at the same time, even ignoring the room for interpretation of the model, you can't update it to the whole market on an ongoing basis. And you will need to update it, because our understanding of what those models need to be looking for, it changes on a regular basis. So I think they're going to find it quite problematic to reach that goal. So this is a really timely question because we're just back from G2E over in Vegas. And what we've seen is a huge shift in appetite for player protection systems in the US over the last 12 to 18 months. There were a lot of operators wanting to talk to us. Obviously, the Prize Picks announcement going out just before the event certainly helped there. I see people like Phil Sherwood, who heads up the team there over at Prize Picks. He is a sort of inspirational guy, and he wants to bring real good player protection to the States. And I see people seeing businesses like Prize Picks doing this kind of thing, led by people like Phil, and realizing that it's also going to be super important to them. So this is something that all different types of organizations are looking at, from the tribal organizations to the Roga members, to the fantasy operators, the likes of Prize Picks and Dabble, and the others that are members of that coalition there. So yeah, I think it's really positive. So this is a super initiative, and the idea here is to standardize responsible gambling practices, and it's quite a sort of a big ambition, I think. So I would say that we're at the early days of that process right now. Mindway have been involved in some elements of this across Europe. We were involved in the SEN standardizations of markers of harm project. So we've got a little bit of experience there. But the other thing that Mindway really brings to the table to help with this as it moves forward is we have a very vast network of professionals in the safer gambling space. So we are able to, number one, facilitate introductions, bring our partners and colleagues into this conversation, and number two, share our own expertise of 7 years of being the leading provider within the space from an AI perspective. How realistic are the aims? Okay, time will tell. I'm going to say on that. It's a huge sort of objective. I think if we can start to standardize and we can start to get people collaborating and working together, it's a step in the right direction. So we will see where that goes. I think we will see positive change and we will see positive initiatives that come out of it, even if it's a long time down the line before we standardize everything. So best practice on AI is to, I would say, work with service providers that can articulate what their algorithms are actually looking for, to understand what your proxy is, to understand exactly what that target is, and to make sure that you are using systems that are explainable and understandable.